Allow me to tell you a quick story. Mark and Jenna weren't in a crisis. Nothing dramatic. No job loss, no emergency hospital bill. Just a normal week. Until their washing machine stopped working. It wasn't completely dead. It just made this horrible grinding noise and refused to finish a cycle. Repairing it would cost a few $100s. Replacing it would cost more. They checked their savings. They could technically afford it. But it would wipe out most of their emergency fund. And that didn't feel safe, so they did what a lot of people do. They financed it. 0 down, small monthly payments. Seemed manageable. But by the time it was fully paid off, that affordable washing machine ended up costing them significantly more than the sticker price. And that's when it hits you. Being broke doesn't just mean you have less money. It means everything costs you more. Most people think being broke is about bad decisions. Spending too much. Not budgeting. Not planning ahead. But that's only part of the picture. Because when you don't have money, you don't get to play the long game. You're forced to make decisions based on what you can afford right now, not what's cheapest over time. And that's where the trap begins. Take something simple. Let's say you need a pair of shoes for work. You could buy a solid pair for $120 that lasts you 2 years. Or you could buy a cheaper pair for $40 that starts falling apart after a few months. If you've got money, the decision is easy. You pay more upfront and forget about it. But if you're tight on cash, that $120 might as well be $1,200. So you go with the $40 pair. A few months later, they're worn out. You buy another pair. And then another. By the end of the year, you've spent more than the person who could afford the expensive option in the first place. Same product category, same need. Completely different outcome. Now scale that up. Appliances, phones, cars, furniture. Cheaper options break faster. They need replacing sooner. They come with hidden costs. But when money is tight, durability becomes a luxury. So instead of buying once and moving on, you end up stuck in a cycle of replacing things over and over again, paying more for worse quality. And then come the moments you can't plan for, because life doesn't wait until your bank account is ready. A medical bill shows up, a tire blows out, something breaks at the worst possible time. And when you don't have enough saved to absorb the hit, you turn to the only option available, credit. At first, it feels like a lifeline. Swipe the card, solve the problem. Deal with it later, but later comes with interest, a lot of it. Credit cards today often carry interest rates north of 20%. That means if you don't pay it off quickly, that $1,000 emergency quietly grows into something much bigger. And the worst part? You're not using credit for luxury. You're using it just to stay afloat. Mark and Jenna started noticing this shift. At first, it was small. A balance carried over 1 month. Then another. Nothing alarming. But slowly, a portion of their income started going toward things they had already paid for. Past expenses, not progress, not savings, not investing. Just catching up. And this is where things start to spiral. Because once part of your income is locked into debt payments, you have less flexibility moving forward, which means the next unexpected expense is even harder to handle, which makes you rely on credit again. And just like that, you're not just dealing with one problem. You're dealing with a system that keeps reinforcing itself. But the real twist? It's not just big emergencies that make being broke expensive. Sometimes it's the small things that slowly drain you without you even noticing. And once you see them, you start to realize just how deep this goes. It shows up in places most people don't even think about. Take groceries. If you've got money, you can walk into a store and buy in bulk. Bigger packs, better value, lower cost per item. You spend more upfront, but you save over time. But when money is tight, that option disappears. You're not choosing between cheap and expensive. You're choosing between what you can afford today, patl, and what you can't. So instead of buying the $15 bulk pack that lasts a week, you buy the $4 version that lasts 2 days. And then you go back again. And again. By the end of the week, You've spent more for less. Same food, same store, different reality. Transportation works the same way. If you own a reliable car, your cost per trip stays relatively low. You fill up gas, maybe handle maintenance here and there, but overall it's predictable. But if you don't have that option, everything becomes more expensive. You rely on rides, public transport, or last-minute solutions. You pay per trip, per ride, per situation. Individually, those costs don't look huge, but over time, they stack in a way that quietly drains your income. And then there's something people rarely talk about: time. When you're constantly working just to keep up, your time becomes limited. And limited time forces expensive decisions. Cooking at home is cheaper, but it takes time. Searching for deals saves money, but it takes time. Planning ahead avoids problems, but it takes time. So when you're exhausted, you default to what's easy. You order food instead of cooking. You grab what's convenient instead of what's cheapest. You solve problems quickly instead of optimally, not because you don't care about money, but because you don't have the energy to fight for every dollar. This is what people mean when they talk about the cost of being broke. It's not just about income. It's about access. Access to better options, access to time, access to flexibility. And when you don't have those things, you don't just spend money, you bleed it slowly, in ways that are hard to track and even harder to escape. Mark and Jenna started noticing this pattern in their own lives. Nothing dramatic, just small decisions adding up. Paying a little extra for convenience, putting off a cheaper long-term fix because the upfront cost felt too heavy. Choosing the option that worked now, even if it cost more later. Each decision made sense in the moment, but together, they created a system where staying afloat quietly became more expensive than getting ahead. And just when it feels like you've adjusted, the system adds another layer. One that doesn't just cost you more money, it charges you because you don't have enough to begin with. That layer shows up in the places you'd expect to be neutral. Banks, bills, basic services. Miss a payment by a couple days. That's a late fee. Your account dips below zero for a moment. Overdraft fee. Can't maintain a minimum balance. Another fee. Individually, they don't seem huge. $20 here, $35 there. But here's the catch. Those fees don't hit when things are going well. They hit when you're already struggling, so the moment you're short on money, you get charged for it, and that charge makes you even shorter next time. Loans work the same way. If you have strong credit and financial stability, you get access to lower interest rates, cheaper borrowing, better terms. But if your finances are already tight, you're seen as higher risk, which means higher interest rates. So the people who can least afford to borrow money end up paying the most to do it. At a certain point, it stops feeling like a series of bad breaks and starts looking more like a pattern, because the system isn't just neutral, it rewards stability and penalizes instability. And over time, that creates a gap that's hard to close. Someone with financial breathing room can fix problems early, buy quality, once avoid interest, take advantage of discounts. Their money stretches further without them even trying. Meanwhile, someone without that cushion is constantly reacting. Fixing things late, replacing instead of upgrading. Paying interest, missing out on savings. Working just as hard, sometimes harder, but moving slower. That's why two people can earn similar incomes and end up in completely different financial positions. Because it's not just about how much you make. It's about how much friction your money faces. And this is the part that changes how you see everything. Being broke isn't just a temporary situation. It's a multiplier. Every dollar you spend carries more weight. Every mistake costs more. Every delay compounds. So when people say, just budget better or just save more, they're not seeing the full picture. Because when your margin is thin, there's no room for perfect decisions. There's only trade-offs. And that's why so many people feel stuck. Not because they're careless, not because they're lazy, but because the system they're operating in makes progress more expensive the less money you have. Mark and Jenna eventually realized something that shifted their perspective. It wasn't that they were bad with money, It wasn't that they were failing. They were just navigating a system where the cost of being slightly behind kept pushing them further behind. And once you see that, you stop asking, why are people struggling? And start asking a much better question. Why does having less money make everything more expensive in the first place? Because being broke isn't just hard, it's expensive. And that changes everything. And there's one more piece most people don't notice until they're deep in it. Stress. When money is tight, every decision carries pressure. Every purchase feels heavier. And that mental load? It affects how you think. You rush decisions. You avoid checking your account. You delay problems you know you should handle now, because dealing with them feels overwhelming. And ironically, that stress leads to choices that cost even more later. So it's not just your bank account taking hits, it's your focus, your energy, your ability to plan ahead. Now imagine the opposite. A little breathing room, a small buffer, enough space where one unexpected expense doesn't knock everything off balance. That's when the cycle finally starts to break. Not because you suddenly became better with money, but because you finally have the ability to make decisions that work long term. So if any part of this felt a little too familiar, just know this. You're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. If this gave you a new perspective, drop a like, subscribe, and stick around, because we're breaking down more of the stuff nobody really explains about money. And once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it.